Our next speaker is Dr. Robert Davis, and he is an MBA graduate. I think we've said it's from 1998, which was from 1988, apparently. So he's put his MBA to good use and said that his following career was as a result of this. He's has his own management consultancy company where he guides people on things like innovation, change, and has recently published The Era of Global Transition, which is Crisis and Opportunity, which is a new book in the area of innovation, especially for businesses in the current market. So I'll hand over to Dr. Robert Davis.
Thank you very much. In the summer of 1972, I had my first day at work. It was an insurance company in the City of London. And I can still remember the words that greeted me. Davis, mind yourself, and you'll retire here a section leader. Now, what that meant in practical terms, over a 40-year period, I would move along a row of 6 desks, from one end of that row to another. Real motivational stuff. But it rang true then, because stability and security seemed to be assured. But that wasn't to be the way. That wasn't to be the case. In all, during the period 1972 to now, I've had to reinvent myself 6 times. The first time in 1985, where I started here at PCL, before it was Westminster. Then in 1990, and I'm going to have the technician come here now. Excellent. Thank you very much. The first time in 1985 when I started my MBA, then 1990, 1995, 2003, 2008, and just last year, 2012. And I guess I've got at least 2 more reinventions ahead of me before I quit this game. Life hasn't been predictable. It has been exciting. And I've been able to develop myself, and I hope very many other people, in ways that I never dreamed possible in that summer of 1972. And I would like to share with you 10 key pointers for success that follows a reflection on my years. The first, I'm afraid, is a mandatory one, and it's very, very much about now. Nobody knows what the future will hold, and the world is very, very much at a tipping point. The popular talk is all about ongoing economic globalization, but we can't be 100% sure that that will happen, and we could well be faced with the opposite, a fractured, regionalized world. So the first thing that I would recommend that you do is to stop and spend some time to think about the competencies, the skills, knowledge, and experience that you will need to survive in both worlds. This really gives you a self-development agenda, which takes me to my second point. Always have a driving vision. The worst points in my life have when I have been without a driving vision. I'd lost my vision. I was rudderless at those points in time. And I would say that a driving vision for me has 3 components. A clear mental picture of the person that you want to be. A clear development agenda to help you get there. And most importantly, a clear definition of the contribution that you want to make to society. Now, interestingly, and I'm going to be very open with you, if you'd asked me what a driving vision was 10 or 15 years ago, I wouldn't have included the last point. Point 3, my third point, schedule in every 3 years a reinvention exercise. You see, in a changing world, it's important to have a driving vision, but that driving vision doesn't have to be rigidly fixed. You will have to know when to reinvent yourself. When the outside world changes or when your aspirations change, you have to rethink. And as I've said, I've had to reinvent myself 6 times, but I see so many people around me, especially now within a decade or so of my age, that haven't even reinvented themselves once. You've got to know when to reinvent. You've got to have the instinct. If you don't, you could end up stuck in a rut with an obsolete skill set. The fourth point I want to move on to is that you've got to worry if you haven't learnt anything notable in a month. If you're not learning, then there's something wrong with the job that you're in, the way that you're managing yourself, or the way that you're managing your job. Point 5 is to worry if you don't make any mistakes. Now, I thought a lot about including that one, and I'm not suggesting that you deliberately go out and make mistakes. But if you don't make mistakes, you're not doing anything different. And importantly, when you do make a mistake or you have a major career upset, don't treat it as a personal failure. Treat it as a learning experience and a platform to start a new chapter. The fifth point is never ever accept mainstream popular thinking without at least challenging it in your mind. If mainstream popular thinking was always right, we would still have the Soviet Union and we would have never had the Great Recession. Carve out time to challenge, research and think differently. We are all specialists in our own different fields. Always try to be a thought leader in that field. The seventh point is confidence. You all have, or you are all going to have, a degree from an excellent institution. And rightly, that should give you confidence, and never ever let anybody take that confidence away from you. But also be quietly, consciously incompetent. I always mentally check out my capabilities every time I start a new project. Then my next point is keep an achievement diary. This sets out your successes, how you've developed yourself, the big projects, how your work has benefited others. You'll need this as a bit of a confidence boost when things don't go quite according to plan. But critically, you'll need it to construct a winning CV. I see so many poorly constructed CVs that are just lists of jobs and not captivating statements of achievement and potential. The penultimate point I want to make is about your network. I totally agree with what's been said about the importance of networking. Invest in your network. The biggest down points in my career have been when I've failed to do two things. I've lost my driving vision and I've failed in the long term to invest in my network. And in that respect, please do feel free to find and connect with me either on LinkedIn and/or Twitter. The last point, point 10, remember people. People are more than numbers and columns in a P&L account or a balance sheet. People are really important, and it took me too long to discover that. So spend time helping people. I'm helping several people right now in the city find new jobs, how to write a CV. So helping is really important. And do remember that there will be a time when you will need help. Thank you for your attention.
I graduated last year with a Masters in Business Psychology. Nick and I met on the course and we started up a career management practice. We've been engaged with some other London universities to actually look at career transition programs for undergraduates and postgraduates. What we found amazing by the workshops, and it was good to get the panels due, is that especially the undergraduates, that all they want to do is get a job and they'll do anything to get a job. We try to explain to them about the assessment day, to demystify it, take the fear out of psychological testing, etc. And the response was a resounding, I don't care, I will do anything possible to get a job. Do you think that's the right way in which we're placing undergraduates to move into careers?
Okay, Robert, would you like to take that one?
I think that's a really important point. And I can understand why young people have that view. It was easy for me when I started. You know, I said I wanted a job at school, and then a week later I had an interview, and then a month later I started work. It's really tough now, so I think there's a lot of desperation out there. Desperation means actually making some really bad mistakes. Now, I do try to help people, and I can't recall over the last year having seen a well-constructed CV. And I can't recall also having people come to me with a reasonably well thought out, shall we say, job search, or even thinking about the assessment process that you referred to. So I think that there's a real vacuum here to fill. People out there are desperate. They need a lot of specialist help.
We got any more questions?
Yeah. I've got a question. Good evening to all of you. My name is Manuel Carmona. I'm a graduate from 2001. And I've got a question for the panel. I agree with Dr. Davis when he says that change will be the norm and not the exception. I mean, you will have to learn to change to new paradigms and new realities. In your opinion, what would be the essential skills and capabilities? And I'm asking this question to you on behalf of my young daughter, right? What would be the essential skills and capabilities that someone has to have in order to be able to deal with change from a global perspective to a local one? Is it social skills? Is it languages? Is it soft skills? It is a very academic curriculum. I don't know if the question is very general, but...
It's a really good question, which means it's a really tough one to answer. But there are two things that immediately came to mind when you asked that question. And there are things that are very important to me, and there are qualities that I like to try to help people with. And that's something, I call it really a vision of the future. In other words, I try to help people to see the future in their own way. And I referred to in my talk, don't always go along with mainstream thinking. You've got to be able to put together factors in your mind so that you can see the future your way. Okay, so you've got to learn those skills. And there are some simple approaches to do that. But I do think that if you're going to survive for a career, and it's something I had really to learn the hard way because I was made redundant in 94, 95. That was one of my real problems. You're going to have to get a view of 10 years from now what the job market will be like, what employers will want. You've got to have your own, you've got to develop a way of doing that. The other side of it is, I would echo really what's been said here, particularly what has just been said. You've got to develop soft people skills. You've got to be good at communicating with people, understanding what, not your problems are, but what their problems are, and understanding how you can help them. You've really got to have those soft approach skills, those soft understanding skills. So for me, it's about developing really your own picture of the future. You see, that's really what influenced me. That's what started off the first reinvention point. That's what I learned how to do here. And then the experience told me, as I said, that people are important. You've got to understand what their problems are, solve their problems, and then things will happen to you.
My name is Akos, and I finished here at the University of Westminster on the undergraduate architectural degree. And I'm one of those few fortunate ones who actually got a job straight after graduation. So I'm considering myself to be lucky because some of my uni mates are still wandering around working in other sectors outside their profession. But what I realized as I started to earn some money is that one of the vital skills that have already been outlined is financial intelligence, because me, who doesn't have a family yet, I think the actual wage that I'm earning is enough to sustain myself, and it goes well beyond that. And there is a certain amount of money that people could put aside and handle that and manage that wisely. However, both my secondary education and my higher education is lacking that part of the education that actually teaches people how to handle and manage their money. So what advice can you give to these people? Because in today's world, it's a crucial and vital skill to have, but it's sometimes hard to find the person to turn to. So what would be your suggestion?
When I started up, there were two types of advice that I wanted. First was some financial advice, an accountant, and also some legal advice. And I just went to my network. And asked for advice. It's important to realize that in my experiences, small businesses and people fail for two reasons. One, accounting and cash flow problems, and they always underestimate how long it takes to set up a business. You know, when I go through one of my reinvention cycles, I have to remember that. The other reason why businesses fail is lack of marketing. Okay, so those are two areas to think about quite strongly. You know, if you are setting up your own business, those are the two areas to focus on. But this is, again, we're coming back to the value of having a good network. You know, I went to my network for advice in those areas.
We're coming to the end of our time now here, so I'm going to just ask the panel to sort of say one closing statement that they'd like us to take away from them this evening.
It's the reinvention thing. It's got to be. It's taken me, you know, I've been 40 years out there. That's what's got me through. You've got to get that instinct. You've just got to develop it. Just try, experiment, fail, but just develop the instinct when things aren't going quite right, and you've got to rethink what you do and the skills that you need. Okay. Please never go for more than 3 years without that rethink. Thank you.
Thank you.